Hello everyone! Today I'll share some of the things that I've learned after completing my first commercial product, and I'm sure there's something for you to take away from my experience. I've put a lot of thought into this video because the knowledge I've learned throughout the 2.5 years of development is so vast that it would make for a very long video. But I've tried to simplify it by grouping it together into the different stages of game development that I have identified. I hope you like it. Peasant Uprise sets a group of peasants on a deadly quest against the new lord that has taken over their province. Unskilled in the arts of war, they will use their only known skills to regain control of Swayne. Peasant Uprise uses RPG and strategy elements to expose a unique experience with a rich storyline. So a couple of thoughts regarding your concept that I think are important. Together with the great game idea that you have, it is critical to know what is the thing that is going to define your game. Why will people want to play it, share it, or even buy it? It could be the features, but it could be purely visuals, which is often the driving force when people buy a game. You should consider this selling point as your core. All throughout development, it is important that you don't lose sight of what's the core offering of your game. You should put most of your production effort into things that impact that core. When thinking about your idea, try to identify a game loop and think about 1 or 2 lines that could easily define your game. Also, keep in mind things like, is this something a YouTuber would want to share? And is this something that would catch attention quickly in social media? It is hard to promote a game if it cannot visually spark any interest. This is also the stage to make decisions. I decided 2 years into development to support multi-language, and it was a huge setback and a lot of refactoring. Decide how you're going to distribute this game, and whether you're going to support controllers, and if you're going to have unit tests, if it's going to be a multiplayer game, and if so, whether it's going to be self-hosted. Am I going to use crowdfunding? And much more. Making these important decisions earlier will make for a smoother production phase with a lot less refactoring. So go to your local library with just a piece of paper and a pen and isolate yourself and really think these things through. And the reason why I will do this first is because I'm going to need these decisions in my planning stage. My other tip here is that you must believe in this idea. You must be in love with the concept because building a game is something that takes years. And if you're not super passionate about your idea, chances are that you're going to start losing motivation along the way and eventually could end up dropping the project. So if you just think that, I kind of like it, that's not a good place to start. And I would recommend to keep polishing that idea until you end up with something that you feel has a lot of potential and will keep you motivated throughout the entire project. Oh boy, planning is so important as an indie game developer. You hear a lot about burnout, lack of motivation, delays, you name it. At the end, it mostly boils down to planning in my point of view. Of course, it would be easy for me to say, hey, plan your project well. But that's not really a representation of reality, and that's why planning is so challenging. First off, once you start production of your game, you're going to get new ideas. And once you start sharing your work, you will also get feedback from your followers, and some ideas are going to be too good to pass. You obviously cannot plan for the unknown, but what you can do is prepare yourself for the inevitable. This is going to happen. There will be not only new ideas, but also work which will require you to learn a tool or do some additional research, or tasks or features that will be more complex than you anticipate. You can't also plan for the number of bugs that you'll have to fix. So all in all, I recommend to embrace that this is going to happen. So when you plan features, always add extra time to account for this. Be thorough when defining your features. Don't just write a task that says pick items in the world. You really have to dig deeper. Do I want visual effects when picking an item? Sounds? Do I need a new animation? Is it going to send a message on the screen? How is it going to connect with my inventory? Am I going to allow items to stack on it? And what happens if my inventory is full? Am I gonna have to trigger an event every time something gets added on my inventory? So all these questions might unveil new scopes of work that you hadn't thought of. Plan everything. Don't just look at the code you need to write. That's not building a game. Building a game involves a lot more. You will need models, sprites, audio, special effects. You will need lighting, a lot of time promoting your game or recording videos, building a Steam page, creating websites. The Peasant Uprise trailer took me over a month. All of this needs to be part of the overall project plan. But planning also needs to be timed. Don't spend 6 months planning a game that you might end up dropping anyway. So the challenge is finding that balance between in-depth planning and getting it done. And my advice here is to stick to what this stage is. So really just plan your game. Don't go and start creating prototypes and finding assets and writing quests. No. Just focus on planning your game. Now, some may think that I'm putting too much emphasis on the timeline, but having a good sense of how long this project is going to take you is critical for any game dev. Maybe after planning the game you realize that your little indie idea is going to take 3 years, and that adds perspective. Maybe you feel very strong about its potential and you're good with that plan, but maybe you choose to reimagine your features in a way that it fits into a timeline that you are more willing to accept. What I want to get out of this phase is an in-depth list of features and a plan with a timeline. To me, prototyping is the most fun part of the project. It's great to come into an empty project and start building something fast and loose. Obviously, the number of prototypes depend on your level of understanding of your game engine and game programming in general. But it is a good idea to prototype things that right now you're not that certain that you know how to solve. Build a separate prototype for any special feature that your game may have, and if you have a game loop in mind, it would be ideal if you could prototype it, and that way you can validate your game flow. Prototyping your network solution is also advisable if this is a core pillar in your game. With my prototypes, I want to unlock the toughest questions in my feature set, not just from a code perspective, but also gameplay and flow. Prototyping is not only to validate that you can turn your tougher ideas to reality, but it is also a good exercise to help adjust your project plan. To me, this is also a very small yet important step. What I want to get out of it is whether this is worth moving forward. I don't want to spend a year building a game just to end up dropping it, so I much rather do some self-evaluation now. What I look for here is not only to validate my prototypes and that it will be a cool game, but also timing and how crazy I am with this idea and its features. So with all this in mind, I use this stage as a crossroads, and I need to reach a decision whether to take it all the way or drop it. There's a lot more to come, but let me know in the comments if you follow a similar process where you organize your project into different stages. I'm curious to know. And if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you fancy Peasant Uprise, go ahead and wishlist it on Steam. Thank you. Different people have different views about what's the goal for a pre-production stage, but I'll share my view. For me, the goal of this stage should be to tackle everything that I need to do before building a game. I also want to handle any productivity tools at this stage, any editor wizard, extensions, any framework enhancements, anything that is going to simplify production. I want to get that down in this stage so I can get full benefits from it. Also, any assets that you plan to buy or create, licenses, integrations, I would want to get that out of the way at this stage. If you want to build a simple website, just get it out there now so you don't have to interrupt production for this. This is a good time to set up all of your social media accounts as well as your Discord server. Just get it out of the way and worry about the details later. Basically, my goal is that when I go into production, I want to be able to get on a roll and not have to get sidetracked to build something else. This is when you start building your dream game, and if you made it this far following the steps above, you should really be in a good spot to steamroll through this. Aside from project setup, etc., I recommend giving priority to building up the systems that you need, as well as the game architecture. Always design an easy path to testing features, either by loading fake data and a way to quickly access a scene you want. I personally created a development scene called Playground, and that's the scene I use to build most of my core functionality. You should go ahead and start sharing your project to the world. It takes a lot of time to build an audience, so the sooner you start, the better. Hopefully, you should have already created all of your social media accounts in the pre-production stage, so it's just a matter to start engaging with the world and share content as you build your game. At some point during production, you will also need to create your Steam page and start doing more proper marketing. But you will need a trailer and some screenshots, so you'll need to have something worth showing. My tip here is to keep it as bare bones as possible. The reason is that your game will change, and you will probably need a new trailer in the future once your UI is more finalized or you have more content, so consider it a first version that you can get by with. I also recommend to isolate code that it's not tied to your project. Every game architecture is composed with some standard patterns to solve common problems, so make sure to isolate those things that could be shared between projects. Using inheritance, generics, and namespace in your project correctly will help to make this happen. I also use a separate assembly for this, so I can port all of this work to any other project I build. There is not much in terms of tips for this stage, and while you'll be doing testing all through production, I reserve this stage where testing is my focus. What I try to do here is to break the game, do the things that are not logical and that don't make sense to succeed the game. Testing for bugs is easy, but spotting usability problems is hard. Platforms like Steam offer the ability of sharing your game with playtesters, and you can organize your own alpha-beta stages. Get feedback quickly, especially to understand whether players are comfortable with the controls and the UI, and inquire about the tutorial and how easy it is to understand how to play the game. Marketing should really kick off during production, but I reserve this stage to really make marketing the focus of my attention, especially since I should be counting with a final build of the game that I can distribute to influencers. This is the time to review your copy as well and to start creating landing pages and tracking your wishlist. Do what you can to see how each campaign impacts your wishlist, so you can better define what works best for your game. Now, little disclaimer here, I have not yet gone through a release stage, so not much to share on this stage, but one thing to keep in mind is that as soon as you have something that kind of works, you should create a build for it. Don't wait for the release stage to create a build. And another tip is to inspect your builds. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of assets that the game is not using. Most solo indie game developers are proud of everything that we make ourselves and tend to put everything on our shoulders. But you know what? Big AAA companies externalize a lot of work, so there's no reason why you shouldn't do the same. If someone else can help you with the music or dialogue or translations or a trailer or marketing, it's worth it, and chances are they'll do a better job than you because that's their main field. I know we're strapped for cash, especially in the first project, but recognize and embrace those opportunities where you can actually get some helping hands. Most importantly, those experiences with asset creators, composers, publishers, or freelancers will help you build relationships that you may decide to continue in future games. Game development is an amazing field of work, and what I love the most about it is how it covers so many artistic fields that come together to expose a world or environment or experience. But oftentimes I see projects dragging longer than expected and getting the best out of the indie game dev, where frustration and burnout creeps in. Planning will help mitigate some of those problems. Good project organization will help you be more efficient, and delegating those things that others will do better is always a good way to go. So you can see I'm gonna organize my next project a little bit better, and I'm gonna set it up into different stages of development, each one having a clear goal of what it is that I want to get out of it. I hope you have enjoyed this analysis, and I do believe it has some very valuable information based on someone who has already gone through this. If you have any of your own tips that you would like to share, please let me know. I'm refining my process for my next project, and I'm eager to hear any feedback. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next update.